Teachers of Reddit, what the worst thing that happened on a school trip? My boyfriend was a teacher and his students went on the annual DC trip. It was like 2 kids to each hotel room or something, and there was 2 14-year-old boys that shared a room. One of the boys jacked off into a pillow and then hit the other kid in the face with the pillow. Very similar story. DC trip. A kid dropped a deuce in the bathtub and came on the window. Yes. The same kid. Less of a story and more of a fact. Gotta love 8th graders. Ask my students to be respectful of other pedestrians while on the trip. Because some people want to enjoy the nature center by themselves. One kid saw a woman with her service dog and tried to pull on it because mommy would let me have it. We had to leave because of that, and he ruined the entire trip for everyone. Kids were going to a conference for a leadership service oriented club. They got brought home early because a chaperone found an orgy in one of the rooms that had been pre-planned in a group chat that almost all of the kids on the trip were in. That was a writ storm. How old were they? Damn, they had a whole orgy. High schoolers. There were about 5 of them. We went skating. And one of the students fell. Smacked her chin off the ice. And somehow got a skate blade to the face. She needed a bunch of stitches. And was able to stick her tongue through the hole in her face. I was a new teacher when the whole grade went on a field trip during the first week of school. In fact, I was so new that nobody, not even my colleagues, noticed that I wasn't on the bus. So it left without me. Fortunately, the destination was only about 15 minutes away. So it wasn't a big deal for me to jump in my car and follow the bus there. Probably could have went for coffee and said you were there the whole time. Could have just not gone and said nobody noticed you were there. I took 3 classes of 6th graders, age 11-12, to visit the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. We'd come from about an hour and a half away, the kids and other teachers on buses. But since I was hugely pregnant, I was allowed to drive my own car. It had been raining. But I arrived a bit ahead of the bus. So when the kids got off, I was there to lead them to the museum. As I began walking towards the kids getting off the buses, I noticed a lot of papers on the sidewalk, and suddenly realized that they were an assortment of extremely pornographic pictures. I stopped to try to gather them up before the kids got an unexpected and completely inappropriate sex ed lesson. We'd already had a big talk about being mature when viewing classical art, for example. Nude statues. OMG. But we were not prepared for the most lurid porn LA had to offer. Unfortunately, the rain had plastered the papers to the sidewalk. And the sight of the very pregnant teacher scrambling on hands and knees on wheelchair BLVD sent the chaperones and teachers rushing to my aid, with 100 kids right after them. No matter how urgently I tried to wave them back. It was memorable. As a student, I was left behind at a Hutterite colony. I went to use the outhouse and the bus left. I went on a class trip as chaperone to a science center. I was in charge of a group of 8 boys. One of them goes missing. I ask the others where he went. And they don't know either. He's missing for about 10 minutes until a security guard from the center comes up to me with him. The guy asks, "Is he one of yours?" And tells this kid to open his backpack when I say yes. Probably $200 worth of stolen stuff in there. He spent the rest of the trip right next to me. I am a teacher, but my anecdote comes from when I was a kid back in the mid-90s. We were visiting some museum in London and were traveling on the train and the tube with teachers. On the way back, some students didn't get on the tube before the automatic doors shut, and the teacher in charge just yelled as loud as he could, "See you back at school, lads." And we just went home, and the teacher waited at the school later on, and sure enough, about 40 minutes after everyone else got back, the remaining kids turned up. If that happened to me now as a teacher in 2019, I'd be fired. Probably out of a cannon into an abyss marked RIP career. You know how it goes. 2 or 3 go missing and suddenly you're irresponsible and criminally liable. I don't know why anyone would get into the profession. The first time I went on a field trip with my youth group kids, we went to an indoor rock climbing place and one of the kids hid in the boys' bathroom, and since all the teachers were girls, we had no idea where he was for a solid 20 minutes. Finally a staff member at the place used the bathroom and brought my missing kid out and said, "Is the one you're missing?" The kid thought it was ducking hilarious, but I was 2 seconds away from calling the police. When I was in the AmeriCorps, I was a tutor at a school where a popular 7th grader drowned on the class's end of the year field trip to a lake at a state park the summer before I started. There were no lifeguards on duty. He was in chest deep water when he went under in the lake and never came up. His friends and the chaperones tried to find him, but by the time they did, it was too late. This was an underserved school in a really rough neighborhood. According to the teachers, things were getting better at the school, but this really ducked with the kids. It was a very challenging year for them. One of my daughter's friends had a schoolmate drown while on a college school trip to local river. She had been a lifeguard throughout high school and the episode ducked her up for a long time. It happened right before we would enter the bus. My students had been waiting for a few minutes and some guys were messing around. I warned them to act normal but left them out of my sight for 1 minute to grab something from my postbox. In that time they pressed the fire alarm. The whole school, 1,650 students, had to be evacuated to the car park where the bus also waited. It was not my favorite morning. A girl on a beta club trip thought it would be funny to put bomb on board in the window of the bus. The interstate was shut down. The bus was pulled over and SWAT team raided the bus. The bomb squad was called in to sweep the bus even though the girl admitted it was a hoax. She didn't go to jail somehow. She was also a popular cheerleader and didn't get any disciplinary action from the school. I'm an English teacher in Korea and field trips are different here. Usually, there are no additional chaperones. The teacher is responsible for all 25-ish students in their homeroom class during the trip. That means a field trip is often 8 classes of 25 students, 200 kids, and a maximum of 10 chaperones if some office staff get taken along. One of my first trips was to a large traditional market. It's a popular place to go and there are usually thousands of people there at all times. Our buses arrived and we all piled off in the parking lot. The kids were told via megaphone, "Be back here in 1 hour. Go." And all 200 of them scattered into the crowds and tents while most of the teachers got back onto the buses to have coffee. Surprisingly, 99% of the kids were back on the buses when they were supposed to be. However, a good number had board small hamsters, turtles, or goldfish. 2 weeks later I couldn't find a single kid whose spontaneous pet was still alive. Not a teacher, but I witnessed the worst things kids could do during a school trip. My classmates and I were chill people. We didn't cause that much trouble. The worst things we could do were smoking a few joints and drinking some alcohol. Nobody got hurt and teachers actually loved taking our class out for trips. During one trip we were not the only students in the hotel. There was another group of younger students from a different city. We didn't even try to socialize with them because they were too loud and obnoxious. During the first night they literally destroyed the hotel. They broke a few doors and windows. Smoked in the room, setting all the alarms off. Went in an authorized personnel only area of the hotel, setting an even louder alarm off, and took hard drugs. The morning after we saw their teachers in the hall and they were trying to blame our class for all the damage. That was around 30,000 euros if I remember correctly, but the security cameras proved that we were innocent. They were kicked out of the hotel immediately after that and I still have no idea why nobody called the police, since there was a lot of footage showing 14-year-old kids doing cocaine in the hallways. We came back with an extra kid. The problem, we had more kids. Well, it never hurts to have a spare. Group trip to take a tour of a college campus. We had a young man jump out of a bus window while it was going down the highway. His long-term girlfriend had broken up with him a few days before. And he later explained that he didn't see the point of going on the college visit anymore because he didn't want to go to the same college as her. Or even apply to the same ones. Denied up and down that it was a suicide attempt. His friends circled the wagons and supported his story. And the story rumors died quickly. He got some gnarly road rash, but avoided being hit by any cars. I always got the impression that it was In fact, a suicide attempt. If he didn't want to go on the tour, why go at all? Why board the bus? He could have stayed at school. This was several years ago. He is fine. Band trip to Disney World. Lead bus driver knew a shortcut. This led to 5 large motor coaches lost in an orange grove somewhere near Orlando. No idea how much damage we did to those trees. The roads really weren't designed for huge buses. Not a teacher. But in 4th grade a turkey flew through the windshield of the bus. We were driving through the middle of nowhere on our way to a farm or something. Don't remember what it was supposed to be because we just ended up going back to the school. Some teachers near the front were picking glass out of their forehead. Think the driver was mostly okay but still needed to get checked out. I don't think any of us kids were hurt at all. Maybe we were too short at that age for the glass to make its way over the seats enough to actually maim anyone. I have no idea. But yeah. A teacher kicked the dead bad off the bus. Did a quick head count. Fluttered over the bus driver. And then we just lined up against a wooden fence at the edge of someone's property while waiting for another bus to come get us. Lots of crazy it went down at my school throughout my entire 12 years. But I think this is the only thing that happened on a trip. Oh. Besides a couple of guys popping some sort of pills while at a Rangers game at the end of the year in 7th grade. They started the next school year in what's basically a pre-juvie kind of setting. That was wild. Mostly because I didn't expect these particular guys to do that sort of thing. Especially at that age. One that I can answer. I had a field trip to local forest preserve with my 3rd grade class. I had a boy with high functioning special needs on the trip who was also a flight risk. Full 1-to-1 for him. Well. It had been a crazy month of rain and storms leading up to the field trip and the river that ran through the forest preserve was flooded. It was hot and muggy so I was in a pair of Nikes. Shorts and a t-shirt. We are looking at the river. But we aren't allowed to go on the bridge as water is touching the bottom of the walkway. Now I've been to this particular forest preserve hundreds of times since I was a kid. I know all the trails and paths. Where poison ivy and oak tend to grow. And where the best parts to see some native wildlife are. Well. My flight risk keeps talking about seeing the river. Starting to get upset that he can't go on the bridge to get close. In my 27 years of visiting this forest preserve I have never seen white caps on this river. There were visual rapids. Lo and behold. The flight risk darts down the road back towards where the bus was. His para at the time isn't exactly physically fit. So I told her to stay with my class with the parent chaperones and I take off after him. He ducks into the woods and I'm probably 250 feet away. He's wearing camouflage. Because it's time to go to the woods. My dad always wears camo in the woods so. As we get into the denser parts of the forest. I'm relying a lot on sound to keep after him. Eventually we break back towards the main road. And I'm about 100 feet behind him at this point. Well. Goes across the main road and down the riverbank. Right towards the rapids. Worst case scenario. I'm a strong swimmer. But I know that floodwaters are nothing to duck with. I know this kid has no chance if he gets in the water. He'll get caught on something and drown. As I get across the road and start sliding down the bank as fast as I can. I see him sitting. Taking off his socks and shoes. Thank God for swimming etiquette. I quickly grab onto him. Throw him over my shoulders. Grab his shoes and walk him back up the steep and slippery bank. He gets put onto the bus with his aide now locking him into the seat while I'm on the phone with the principal. He says he's on his way to drive him back to school. He starts complaining that he's got a rash. He's gone through tons of poison ivy and oak. Luckily, I don't have a reaction to it. So in a way, he got a lesson for what he did. I wasn't a teacher but I was a junior counselor at a summer day camp. Which basically meant I was still a kid myself at the upper age limit for the camp, 13. And I attended for free in exchange for helping the real counselors with the younger kids. Mostly we did nothing and had no real authority. But when it came time for the big summer trip to an amusement park, suddenly me and another JR counselor were saddled with watching a group of 8 kids for the day with no adult. Everything went better than expected until the end of the day when we were trying to corral our group to leave. They didn't want to go, so they jumped in line for this sightseeing ride and got on before we could stop them. It was basically a slowly rotating observation room that went up a tall tower, stopped a while, then came back down. It got stuck halfway back down while we were frantically trying to find a real adult to let them know what happened. This was before cell phones were common. So I waited at the ride while my co-JR counselor went to find someone from our group. It kept us from leaving for an additional half hour to an hour while they got it unstuck. The counselors got in trouble for letting 2 13-year-olds escort a group alone. And I stopped going to the camp a week later because the other counselors started bullying me in retaliation. Not teacher. I remember back in high school my friend got caught jacking off in the furthest backseat on the bus by his mother, who was a teacher and chaperone for the field trip. Not a teacher. But this happened at our school trip. We were 12 and about to finish elementary school. So our teacher took us to a 2-day vacation near a lake in Vantaa, Finland. Our teacher didn't give us a planned schedule. He just said that we were able to do anything we wanted. Apparently a guy and a girl took this literally. And both of them lost their virginity at the age of 12. They both went to heat up the sauna, but never came back. Our worried teacher went to check that they hadn't suffocated, since wood heated saunas tend to release a lot of carbon monoxide. So there they were, immediately separated, and our teacher had to make 2 uncomfortable phone calls to the kids' parents. I still remember those phone calls, word by word. I'll try my best translating them. First, hi MRS. It's about Jamie. No, nothing bad happened to him. It's just, well, what, in your opinion, is the correct age to lose your virginity? Yes. Yes. You how? Yes. Jamie, your mother wants to speak with you. Second, hi mister. I have some bad news. No, Erica's fine and all. It's just that, well, yes, no, nothing like that. Much worse, mister. Is it appropriate to lose your virginity in elementary school? You how? Yeah. For the safety of the student I can't tell you. No, he's the same age as your daughter. Well, I stopped them. Yeah. Sure thing. I'll tell her. Erica, your dad is coming to pick you up. He's here in 45 minutes. I'm a student. But at our school trip 2 teachers had an affair. People found out 2 years later and they are still going strong, lol. Another teacher mysteriously birthed a child 9 months after another school trip with my sister's class. The father was another teacher that was on the trip as well. I live in a small town, and rumors travel fast. This happened just the other week. We had left the school about 5 minutes before on the bus, when a student got my attention and said, "Miss, someone hit a girl in the head with a bottle and she's crying. I think here we go," and head down the back to settle them down. I get there. Students all looking on and crowding on. And sure enough, the girl is in tears and is holding her hand against her head. I ask, "Are you okay?" And she pulled her hand away from her head and it was gushing blood. We turned the bus around and she ended up going to hospital. Long story short, head wounds bleed a lot. 12-year-olds make bad decisions. And everyone was okay in the end. Can't say I felt overly prepared for that though. Obligatory, not a teacher. But when my econ class went to Nick for a field trip, one of my classmates tried to buy weed off a guy in an alleyway. Turned out to be an undercover cop. We were the honors class. He was a cool kid. I was walking to school in freezing weather one day and he offered me a ride. Don't remember what happened to him after that. I know he didn't graduate with us that year. You would think an undercover cop would have bigger fish to fry than a high school kid trying to buy weed. Why would he blow his cover over a thing like that? Not a teacher but a chaperone on a 6th grade trip. And on the bus a pair of them all. Developed students proceeded to have a rather extensive makeout session. So I went back there and plunked my dad butt between them. They were not happy. The conversation about teen pregnancy avoidance was even more painful for them. My 15 years old stepsister was caught giving a guy a BJ on the bus back from their ski trip. Catholic school. They both got asked to leave. She moved to local public high school and was known as BJ Girl. Side note. 2 years later my bio dad and stepmom split up. I'm back living with my mum. In a different town, 4 hours away, and a new kid starts at the school and he was telling the story of BJ Girl in our home ec class. Went to a new school camp which featured a night walk. We got sent out with no map onto a very poorly marked trail. A large gap opened up and one teacher wound up with 55 of the students panicking around her while the 3 other adults had about 15 students with them. Eventually we made it back to camp with the right number of kids. Not sure if they were all the same ones though. 9th grade student got caught with beer in his energy drink bottle. Student very nearly got hit by a car. A 3rd student vomited. All on the same trip. Once my boss ducked up and we got to the airport late and we missed our flight. So 40 kids and 7 adults and he refused to split our group up. We ended up having to stay an extra night. It was a nightmare since our bags made it and we didn't. Also had a student fall off the train platform and onto the tracks, breaking ribs and knocking herself out cold. She looked like a ragdoll going down and I felt helpless just trying to keep the other kids calm. She was okay eventually.